Excellency Dr. Raja, warm welcome to you, my colleague Jiten Prasad, other Shri Rajesh Agarwal, Commerce Secretary, our Chief Negotiator Mr. Ajay Badhu, Additional Secretary, and all the distinguished friends from the media. A very good afternoon. Truly a momentous day when we are signing the terms of reference of yet another free trade agreement, this time with our friends from the 6 nations which comprise the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC. Many of us are aware that discussions have been going on for nearly 2 decades, that 2 trading partners, as His Excellency Dr. Raja Marzoki just mentioned, 2 trading partners who have been trading amongst each other for over 5,000 years. It is most appropriate that we now enter into a much stronger and robust trading arrangement which will enable greater free flow of goods, services, bring predictability and stability to policy, help encourage greater degree of investments, and take our bilateral relations between the 6-nation GCC group and India to greater heights. Friends, we are all aware that India is on the fast track. Not only are we the fastest growing large economy on the globe today, with quantum growth over the last decade, our strong fundamentals, the macroeconomic fundamentals, the massive reforms being carried out under the Reform Express, our effort to engage with friendly global partners with deeper agreements and arrangements. We have entered into a record 8 FTAs and will soon announce the 9th bilateral trade agreement's first tranche details with the USA, which has been agreed upon only 2 days back. Effectively, these 9 free trade agreements between India and other developed nations cover 38 countries, all of whom, 38 countries, all of whom are developed nations. The lowest per capita income of any of these countries is probably $20,000 to $25,000. These economies help us in our own thrust to modernize India, to meet the aspirations of young India, to provide opportunities for our farmers, our fishermen, our MSMEs, our manufacturing base, give our youth and women more opportunities for business, for becoming exporters, jobs, and help India achieve its stated goal of becoming a developed nation by 2047, Viksit Bharat 2047, when we celebrate 100 years of independence. Friends, the agreement with the GCC group of 6 countries will further strengthen our relations both on a geopolitical and trading elements, will help draw greater amounts of investments, create job opportunities for Indians both in the GCC nations and in India, encourage the food security and energy security of both the GCC nations and India, and give a message to the world of our deep ties and historic relations, friendly relations. And as I believe the GCC and India come closer together, we will become a force multiplier for global good. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's leadership, the six-nation GCC group has transformed into a strategic economic partner. Our friendship has taken newer and greater dimensions, and the strong bonds that Prime Minister Modi shares with all the leaders of the six-nation GCC group have enabled us today to launch our discussions on this very powerful new partnership that will help us grow our engagement with the GCC. We already have a very robust, nearly 179 billion bilateral trade between the GCC countries and India. I believe a number of products and services required by the GCC countries can be provided by our young, very talented and skilled Indians, as the GCC countries can help us with further diversification and growth of our energy sources, opportunities for our youth, and massive amounts of investments that different countries have already committed at different point of time, which will further get an impetus with a free trade agreement between India and the GCC nations. We already have about 10 million Indians living and working in the GCC region, helping power the economies of the GCC and working as a living bridge between our societies, between our nations. I am very confident that going forward, this block-level FTA, we already have an FTA with Oman and UAE, but an FTA, a more holistic, comprehensive FTA with all the six nations of the Middle East, the Gulf Cooperation Council nations, will further give comfort to businesses on both sides, expand our trust, which over 5,000 years has taken very strong dimensions, and will help us grow sectors like food processing, which will help our farmers and fishermen in a very big way, giving them bigger opportunities for value-added products, which are already exported to the GCC nations in substantial measure, which will get a big boost with elimination of duties, tariffs and non-tariff barriers. We will also get a foothold to grow Indian infrastructure and the infrastructure in the GCC together with the high-quality companies that are working in the space of infrastructure. Our petrochemical industry will hugely benefit with this partnership. Our information and communication technology, the ICT companies, will get opportunities in the ever-growing GCC market, and collectively, the six nations and India will continue to play an increasingly important role in the global arena. Congratulations, friends, to both the teams on the execution, on the finalization of the terms of reference. I look forward to working very closely with the GCC nations for mutual benefit for both the GCC and India, and further strengthening one more partnership and take the country forward on a fast track under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Thank you.
Rumi Mishra is joining me with more details. Rumi, what?
Yes, so Vaishali, Union Minister Piyush Goyal, as we can see, has just signed the terms of reference for the India GCC FTA. He has stated that this block level FTA, of course, we had a pre-existing FTA with Oman and other nations. This block level FTA in particular will give comfort to Indian businesses, farmers, and help India in food processing. It will also be very helpful for our fishermen and the fishery sector in particular. India and the Six-Nation Gulf Cooperation Council have agreed on these terms to start negotiations for a free trade agreement. This is going to be the 9th FTA that India signs after January 2025. Remember, India recently just signed, has in fact agreed upon terms for a trade deal with USA as well. Apart from the UAE and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain and Oman are also part of the GCC. The Union Minister has made the announcement as India and the Gulf nations bloc sign the terms of reference. Goyal has stated that the robust trading arrangement would enable a greater free flow of goods and services and will encourage more investments. This marks yet another step for India in boosting economic ties with other countries. This agreement between India and the GCC comes weeks after UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan paid a visit to India, which was a trip that had sparked buzz due to its short duration. The UAE President stayed in India only for 3 hours, during which he also met Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and both leaders had reviewed the full scope. Remember, they also shared a car ride, which of course Prime Minister broke the rules that he has for himself, and that shows the great amount of friendship that India has with the UAE. Over to you, Vaishali.
Manohar Kesri joining me with more details. मनोहर, इसके बारे में आप हमें और क्या जानकारी दे सकते हैं? All right, viewers, we'll try and reconnect with my colleague.
उन्होंने निर्णय लिया है, हमारा पहला ट्रांच बायलैटरल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट का लगभग तैयार हो गया है. हमारी उम्मीद है कि अगले 4-5 दिन में हम एक जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका और भारत के बीच में फाइनलाइज करके साइन कर देंगे, और उस जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट के आधार पर शुरुआत हो जाएगी हमारे दोनों के बीच में इस समझौते की पहली कड़ी. साथ ही साथ एक फॉर्मल एग्रीमेंट ड्राफ्ट हो रहा है जिसको शायद महीना भर 1.5 महीना लग सकता है, और उस फॉर्मल एग्रीमेंट को मिड मार्च तक साइन करने का अंदाजा है. लेकिन 18% जो यूएस टैरिफ्स घटने हैं वो जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट अनाउंस होने के बाद एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑर्डर द्वारा यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका कर देगा. उसके 1-2 दिन बाद वो एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑर्डर बनाते हैं ना, and he has to sign an executive order. जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट 4-5 दिन में, और जल्दी भी हो सकता है. आप तो जानते हो हमने हर एक चीज जल्दी की है, स्पीड हमारी यूएसपी है. हाँ, जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट के बाद एक एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑर्डर के माध्यम से ये 18% लागू होगा।
See, joint statement, हर country के साथ एक joint statement आया है after the deal has been finalized at the leaders level. So that joint statement will come, as Honorable Minister pointed out, in next maximum 4-5 days. It can happen early, as Honorable Minister has indicated. Two, once the joint statement is there, that joint statement needs to be converted into a legal agreement. That legal agreement will come into force. We are targeting for March, mid-March, as Honorable Minister has decided. We will try to meet to those timelines. This legal agreement will give us the authority to reduce our tariffs, because on Indian side, the tariffs reduction is only after a legal agreement, because their tariffs are executive tariffs. Our tariffs are MFN tariffs. So MFN tariffs reduction only can take place after the legal agreement has been signed. So that will only happen after the legal agreement has been signed. Yeah.
But
so
we hope to do it fast, maybe because there are further concessions that we will get after the legal agreement. No, there is no investment commitment. वो बोलने में शायद कभी चूक हो जाती है। ऐसा है कि we already have stated on record in Parliament and otherwise that the fast-paced growth at which India is going ahead in our journey in the Amrit Kal to Viksit Bharat 2047, we will need large volumes of energy, we will need large number of data center equipments, ICT products. Our steel capacity is going to double from today's 140 million tons to about 300 million tons in the next few years. And therefore, when we estimated what we will need from the USA, we came to a figure of at least $500 billion. We can clearly see before our eyes as potential that we can procure from the United States of America over the next 5 years. Our aircraft demand alone, orders placed on Boeing and yet to be placed but ready, are nearly $70-80 billion. If you add the engines and other spare parts, it will probably cross $100 billion. Just aircrafts alone. Data centers have just been given huge concessions in the budget. Now imagine if we get $100-150 billion of investments in data centers, we will obviously need equipment for those data centers. So I think the time is ripe for India to boldly go forward to achieve, and don't mix up the two, the target of $500 billion bilateral trade, which was set in the February 2025 announcement joint statement between USA and India, between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. When they met in February 25, we had set a target of $500 billion of bilateral trade. And if we have to achieve that, we will certainly need to do a lot more exports and a lot more sourcing, both from between USA and India. Sorry? Massively, massively.
Sir, on that, sir, one point if I can add, sir. You need to note that all the things that we have committed to buy as part of this deal with United States, our current purchases from Globe are $300 billion plus. In the next 5 years, these purchases are going to be $2 trillion. If we are able to buy $500 billion from US, it will only add to our diversification and resilience in our supply chain. So it is something which is win-win for India also.
Thank you.
So one more thing. Sir, will a team travel from India for finalizing the joint statement, or is it being done virtually?
It is being done virtually. Thank you.
मनोहर केसरी is joining me with more details. मनोहर, आप हमें और क्या जानकारी दे सकते हैं?
देखिए बिल्कुल आज कल कार्यक्रम वैश्विक हुआ है, ये काफी गलत है। इसके लिए फायदेमंद आपके जो विश्व में लगातार टैरिफ बढ़ाने के लिए अमेरिका के पास तो ऐसे में आज गल्फ कॉन्फ्रेंस काउंसिल के साथ जो है कि हमारा जो कॉन्फ्रेंस हुआ उसमें भारत के कॉमर्स मिनिस्टर हैं पीयूष गोयल, उन्होंने इसे लीड किया, प्रिसाइड किया और साइनिंग सेरेमनी इसलिए इम्पोर्टेंट है कि आने वाले टाइम में जो हमारे 6 गल्फ कंट्रीज जिस काउंसिल के मेंबर्स हैं, चाहे संयुक्त अरब अमीरात की बात हो, ईरान की बात हो, कतर की बात हो या दूसरे कंट्रीज की बात हो, उनके साथ जिस तरह से हमारा ट्रेड बढ़ा, इस तरह से हमने पहले भी फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट किया है, तो अब कुछ देशों के साथ देखिए कि जो बायलेटरल ट्रेड हो रहा है 178.5 बिलियन US$ है। तो इस तरह से अगर हम इनके साथ और FTA अगर होता है तो हम टैरिफ वार अमेरिका के साथ हो रहा है जो अभी भी 18% बनाई थी, उन्होंने 25% से 3% कम कर दिया है। इससे आने वाले समय में एक्सपोर्ट और इम्पोर्ट को बहुत ज्यादा फायदा होगा और ये आज का दिन काफी ज्यादा खुशहाल है।
जी मनोहर, शुक्रिया जानकारी के लिए. And I have Mitali Nikore, who's an economist, who's joining me on the broadcast. Mitali, welcome. And now, from an economic standpoint, how significant is an India GCC FTA for India's growth story?
So thanks a lot for having me on the show, Vaishali. And honestly, I think this is truly a historical week if we think about it, because the week began with the India-EU free trade agreement.
All right, viewers. So this, of course, is the big free trade deal that we're talking about. Now, this is, of course, a launch of we're talking about the free trade agreement, which is, of course, happening, and the Commerce and Industry Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, is, of course, presiding over the signing ceremony of this FTA with the GCC. Let me tell you what the GCC really is. Now, the GCC is a union of 6 countries in the Gulf region, inclusive of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain. I have Mitali Nikore, who's an economist, who's joining me on the broadcast. Mitali, we were unable to hear you earlier, but it's the same question that I want to ask you.
Thank you, Vaishali. I was just saying that it's really been a historic week. If we think about the trade for India, if we think about international trade for India, because we started with the India-EU trade deal, and then it was interspersed with the Indo-US, thaw, and the tweet, which made several headlines. And now today we are here announcing the free trade agreement with the Gulf countries. So honestly, I think all around one of the best weeks in international trade for India in a very long time.
And Mitali, I want to ask you now, does this FTA address India's current trade challenges, or is it more strategic than economic?
I think, when we think about this FTA, so just think about, where India is positioning itself globally. India is putting itself in the center of global value chains, because today, if we export or import anything from Europe, it's duty-free. If we export or import anything from the Gulf countries, it's duty-free. Think about the seamless movement of, essential commodities like oil. It almost creates like a free trade oil corridor, which goes through India, Europe, and in India and the GCC countries, trading oil freely together. This is really one of the most interesting, advances in the value chain on oil. And not only oil, of course, this benefits a lot of other commodities, but of course the biggest gainer being energy exports and imports.
All right, Mitali, I also want to know from you now, which Indian export sectors are likely to gain the most under an India GCC FTA?
So, as I mentioned, the first, of course, is oil, and we are talking about oil because of the fact that, of course, we are importing from the GCC countries, but at the same time, we would also be, processing this energy and processing this oil and then exporting it to other countries around the world, particularly Europe. So, there's a huge benefit in terms of that. But also when we think about sectors like gems and jewelry, when we think about sectors like pharmaceuticals, when we think about sectors like auto components and auto parts, when we think about machinery and equipment, engineering goods, all of these sectors suddenly get a huge boost because the entire GCC market opens up to them for duty-free access just in the same time as the Europe market opened up for them. And the regulatory barriers, in both these, the regulatory compliances actually that are required in both these markets are quite similar. So actually it makes it very easy for manufacturers in India to gear up to service both markets.
And do you think, Mithali, that could cheaper imports from GCC nations hurt domestic producers in any sector?
So definitely, I mean, if we think about some of the sectors where GCC countries are competitive, that does include, of course, energy products. It includes even some pockets in terms of cement that comes in. If we look at some of the heavy commodities, that is the case. But very honestly, GCC countries are reliant on India and several other global south countries for a number of consumer goods and for FMCG products. And these products will definitely stand to gain under the new trade agreement.
Mithali, just to understand from you, how do you think this agreement would impact India's trade deficit with the Gulf region?
So the thing is that I don't think that it will have, I mean, it's not as though we would be able to bridge that gap too much, because if you think about it, the main reason for the deficit is because of oil imports. And, oil imports coming into India, from the Gulf region are one of the most important imports for India's energy security. In fact, rather than thinking about the trade deficit, I would suggest we think about the cost of trading and the cost of importing oil. And with this free trade agreement, we can bring down the cost of importing oil because even India would have had to give certain concessions on custom duties on oil. And it makes a lot of sense for our population, for the cost of, this oil import to come down, because it brings down inflation, it, enhances the investment scenario, and it makes it easier for small businesses to access electricity and energy at a lower cost.
All right. Mithali, now given India's dependence on Gulf energy, can this FTA improve price stability or supply security?
So definitely it can, do both. But more importantly, I think this seals the relationship between India and the GCC countries for not only trade, like we've seen even with Europe and we've seen even with the UK, but also for joint investment. And there are several new areas in which the GCC countries want to invest. They want to invest in renewable energy. They want to invest in AI-first technology. They want to invest in, space technology, and all of these areas are areas where joint investment with Indian firms can actually take the GCC countries forward as well, and both the, regions forward. So I think it's really a win-win-win.
But Mithali, anywhere that do you think there's a risk of over-reliance on the GCC for critical commodities?
So I think our main reliance on the GCC countries really comes from, the oil imports. And definitely, I think we have to look into the fine print of the deal. I mean, that's not yet come out. We'll definitely look into the fine print of the deal, and then we would be able to comment further.
And Mithali, now when it comes to investment and capital flows, do you expect increased FDI from GCC sovereign funds as a result of this FTA?
Definitely, I expect, a huge boost in FDI coming from GCC countries to India. But I also expect a huge increase in investment from India to the GCC countries. And both those developments are extremely welcome, because at the end of the day, it is the GCC countries which are growing very fast, which are getting in expats from across the world to come and actually live there. There's a huge consumption market that's, quadrupling, and definitely it can have a huge, benefit on the two economies.
All right, Mithali, now how important, in your opinion, is regulatory certainty in attracting long-term Gulf investments?
Thanks, Vaishali. And with this, I'll have to actually leave. So I'll just make my last remark, which is that, on the regulatory uncertainty, we really have to wait for the fine print of the deal to come out. Because, when the deal actually is signed, after that, we will be provided with the documents and we can then look through the documents. And only then will we know, how are the regulations and the sector-by-sector tariffs and the sector-by-sector duty exemptions, how are those changing? Or is it that we are going to be doing away with the sectoral differences and really be doing, country-level changes? So, and also regional level changes. So I think that just remains to be seen in the fine print of the document.
All right, Medali, thanks for joining me on the broadcast. And with that, we're slipping into a short commercial break.